During the last day of 2025, I woke up in the morning, and the first thing I did was open up Instagram. The very first thing I saw was a post where it talked about ghosting people. It went something along the lines of, if people have ghosted you, it's because they had enough of you, don't feel like talking to you, or don't want to get into a situation where they don't feel comfortable to be in. Now, just so you know, that's not what the whole post actually said. It was just some of the things that were brought up. I can't find the original post anymore. I tried, but it's buried with other similar posts. Upon seeing that, it reminded me of something that happened to me 5 years ago. I've had some friends that I've met on PlayStation 4. Friends who I generally thought were friends of mine, but that just wasn't the case. To give you a bit of context of what I was like back in the day, I was a teenager who didn't have many friends in high school. I've had a few, but we never really did things together what friends would typically do outside of school. Things like going to the movies, visit each other's homes, that sort of thing. There were a few who were decent to me, and then there were a few who only wanted to hang out if they weren't with their friend group. Once they were with their friends, I was always left out of their group. I remember this one time where we were in a school trip to visit a place in Montreal. This friend who I had a friend group from our class, and he really didn't want me to hang out with them. He provided a pathetic excuse, something along the lines of,
"One of our friends' legs hurt, and you can't be there, or it'll be worse."
That was one of the most dumbest things I've ever heard. And that school year sucked in general. I still have PTSD from it, to this very day. When I was at home, I often played video games on my PS4, and met a bunch of random people there. Most of them were kids who were younger than me. As you can probably guess, most of them were immature. I've met a few people of my age, and I've met some adults as well. Most of the adults were fine, but the teenagers on the other hand, well, some of them were alright, but then there were also immature ones, pretty much like kids. In total, I've had 300 friends on my PSN account. That's 300 people who I haven't spoken to for years. Among those 300, there were a few who I genuinely liked to hang out with while playing games and chat about life. I remember making silly videos where we had funny moments in games, and I occasionally made machinimas. Those videos were uploaded on YouTube, but I deleted those videos. They're long gone now. Around 2020, the world was in a pandemic, and so everyone had to stay home. I slowly became depressed. The friends who I had in high school would rarely talk to me. Even if I tried to reach out first, it would usually just be a short conversation, and nothing else. And those friends that I've had online slowly started to move on. I've had no one to talk to. I reached out to some of the good ones. I texted them asking if they want to hang out. They've seen my text, but never responded. I was ghosted. About a year later, I felt truly miserable. I would go to sleep at around 3 to 4 AM, and wake up at around 1 to 2 PM. I'm not joking. No one to talk to, no one to hang out with, it was awful. But that was 4 years ago, and looking back at it, I will admit, the problem wasn't just dumb, but I was also the problem. I wanted attention. I wanted to be cool. I wanted to be accepted into modern day society. I just wanted to be with the cool kids. But that never happened, and that's probably for the best. I was an annoying kid who would talk way too much and would always talk about myself. I've said and did some very stupid things that I deeply regret, but I didn't deserve to be left behind by others. I didn't know how to communicate properly with other people, which may have been the cause of why I struggled to make friends. What does this have to do with ghosting? Honestly, probably not a lot. But there were instances where I know for a fact that I was ghosted. I've had this one friend who was from the UK. Let's call him Dan. Dan was a cool guy. We played games from time to time and had silly moments. Dan reminded me of a YouTuber called The Gaming Lemon, because he kinda acted like him. One day, I texted Dan, asking if he wants to hang out and play games together. Dan saw my message, but he never responded. I understand that people don't always have time for you, and that they might be busy. That would be completely understandable, if that was for like a day or two. But more than a week passed, and he never responded to me. You could have just said, "I'm sorry, but I can't," or "I don't want to." But no, he chose not to do anything. Looking back at it, I honestly don't blame him. A lot of people who didn't want to hang out or do anything with me, they usually never said no. Why? Because they didn't want to hurt my feelings. I appreciate the thought, but ignorance usually doesn't solve anything. Because here's what will happen. By purposely ignoring someone who hasn't done anything wrong to you, we'll find out the truth by you leaving their messages as read or seen. They will understand that you are not brave to say no to them. If you really worry about hurting their feelings, then try to come up with an answer that isn't hurtful. It can be difficult to come up with something like that. I try to think of an answer as an example, but I can't come up with one. But I do know one thing. There's always a way to respond to someone without hurting their feelings, and leaving them in the dark isn't one of them. I know that topics about stuff like that is something that people can take it the wrong way, but I'm sick and tired of people purposely avoiding others by not responding to their messages and thinking that everything will be alright and the problem might fade away. That might be the case for you, but for the person who you're avoiding, they are left with pain that can take a long time to heal from, especially if they're sensitive. Like me. I can understand if the person you're trying to avoid is a bully, a creep, or a stalker. But if it's someone who just wants to be friends with you, then I'm sorry, but you're in the wrong here, and you can't convince me otherwise. As I am an adult now, I moved out to Europe, and have started over, so I try my best to not repeat my past mistakes. I only talk to people who seem nice, and if we manage to form a friendship or some sorts, I try to respect their boundaries. I have a few friends who I've met in a German integration course that I'm attending, and I'm trying my best to not be annoying, like how I was during my teenage years. And you know what? They are actually pretty decent to me. The German course is pretty difficult, but when they're there, they generally make me feel like I belong there, which is quite a rare thing for me. I don't know what else to say, and to be fairly honest with you, I don't know what this video even is about anymore. I just wanted to talk about something that I haven't healed from. I understand that the world doesn't revolve around me, but it doesn't mean I should be left in the dark either.